Hi, welcome to Jade Kind Gaming. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to do a flip-through and review of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition book, Volo's Guide to Monsters. And I guess initially, I'll just sort of, a brief review. I loved the way this is laid out. And I did not think I was going to. It's sort of separated into a big chunk of, like, fluff and world information, which is geared towards Forgotten Realms, which I don't play in. At least I haven't at this point. Then there's a bit of a section with races, which I knew I would love some races. And then there's some monster section, which I figure, okay, cool, so like a miniature monster manual. But in general, because it has like 10 different types of monsters are the main focus throughout both the lore, and a lot of the monsters that are in the back, it gives a unified feel to it. And even some of the races work with, being some of those same monster races are now player races options that you can allow for your players. So it's a great Dungeon Master supplement. And I hope they do further books in the same style. I mean, there's no dragons in here in the game called Dungeons & Dragons, so I would love if they do a book on dragons, or there's no fiends. So the Fiend Folio and the Dragonomicon are books that we've had in previous editions, and I'd love if in this edition's version of those, if they follow a similar style to this. Anyways, well, of course it has the lovely cover art, to which there is a variant cover, which I loved the idea of a variant cover, but it wasn't the same style. It was completely different. If they had a variant cover art for supporting friendly local gaming stores that had this same style font header, had the little flag banner, and your little touting we're the world's greatest role-playing game thing in the bottom, pretty much that style guide that had on the back the same, glossy section up to this point and then a matte sort of description here, but the art was actually different, I would have loved that. But it wasn't. It was just a completely different looking book that just didn't fit the style of the rest of the books, including the spine. I don't believe the spine matched this. Which, the spine is very important. It has to look good on a shelf. And it has to match the rest of the series. Anyways. Of course, we have a disclaimer, which you can get. Anyways, we have, our table of contents, which really is right up here, and then the first of ways to look up monster stat blocks, the index for your monsters, here. The Volo is a character in Forgotten Realms, as is Elminster, and both of them have occasional bits within here where they talk, where they give their opinions on things. And I was afraid that it would be intrusive. It's really not. Most of it is things like these little boxes here. But Chapter 1 is monster lore, and it's fluff. And technically, I guess it is based on Forgotten Realms, but whatever. It's beholders, giants, gnolls, goblinoids, hags, kobolds, mind flayers, orcs, and yuan-ti, or however that's pronounced, snake people. They have sections for each of those types of monsters, and some of them are really cool. They are sort of the thing that could give you ideas to start campaigns. Beholders are... even just sit there. Bad dreams come true. Almost the idea... Beholders are born from dreams of other beholders. That's one of the things that's within this lore. And it's just interesting. They give ways to make a whole bunch of unique characteristics for different ways that beholders could look, which in most campaigns doesn't matter. But if you have a campaign with a lot of beholders in it, because it's the set focus of your campaign, it's very good. They give some ways to use some of their eye rays outside of combat. Let's see. Variant abilities that you could give to beholders. And a lair for beholders, as well as some, ideas on treasure that they would have. Minions that they would have. So pretty much to run a dungeon for a beholder, it has stuff for that. Again, giants. It goes over the, they give some giant words and things like that, but they go over the different types of giants and their order in whatever, how giants work, which is, again, Forgotten Realms, but it gives you ideas. And it kind of covers the different types of giants, which is kind of cool. We go into gnolls, which are the hyena people. And, again, more information, more things like physical features, personality traits, names, which is all great things if you're going to have your campaign rely heavily on them. A lot of this section here is wonderful. Creating a war band with, in addition to having different types of gnolls, some of the other things that they might have with them. And yeah, I'll just mention it. This is great for if you have a campaign around the idea of a specific type of creature. If you're going to have goblinoids be the main monster throughout the entire campaign, having a lot of ideas to start with, and even if you change a bunch of it, because you're going to change a bunch of it, it's your game. Well, most likely you change a bunch of it. But the idea that you have somewhere pretty fleshed out to start with that takes, maybe half hour, to an hour to read through if you just really sit down and read just that section, just the goblinoid section, it's enough that you can get ideas for goblins, hobgoblins, and bugbears, their ranking within each other, how they interact, and how they, how they could be used in an adventure. We get hags. Hags had some. Oh yeah, hags had vehicles. That's weird. I don't know if I like it. I like it almost in the concept of hags fly around on broomsticks, and well, let's take that into cauldrons and bird's nest and giant skulls, and it's weird. But it's something interesting, I guess. And a lot of the layers maps aren't really all that useful as battle maps. There's one that's very clearly not useful as a battle map. But they're interesting if you need to visualize it for yourself. This is actually 3 different hag layers. One in a tree, one in a giant skull, and one on a ship. Which would be for, of course, different types of hags. We get kobolds, which are little dragons. And I love that art. I just thought that was a really cool art. They just look so merry. They have their dragon horde. Whatever. We get, kobold names, like Galax or Molo. It's a very simple list, and the fact that there's a roll chart is, whatever. It's sort of the, we're going to list these. We might as well put 20 of them and put the numbers 1 through 20, so you can just randomly generate it with ease. It's not really necessary, but, they did it. Mind flares were some of the interesting ones with really creepy art as well. But they're one of the aberrations. They're an interesting group, like Beholders, and so I thought that they were very cool. Almost thinking between the Mind Flayers and the Beholders, I might have an idea for a future campaign, which is great. That inspiration is wonderful. Orcs, another classic monster. And they give information here on orcs. And so personality traits like, I never relinquish my weapon, or I love a good brawl. Or we get orc flaws, like, I have a calm temperament, and that insults roll off my back. That doesn't work very well in an orc society. Interesting things to make, which are useful if you're playing an orc, because orcs are one of the ones that, in the races section, you can play. But, we get some treasure, and then you untie. They're the snake people. Again, similar sorts of things, some roll charts, some information on them, and as many of them have a lair or temple. And either treasure, or in this case they have minions. So you get a lot of that sort of thing throughout the book. It's that first section is a lot of lore. It's different types of monsters, and just a big, a sizable chunk, much more than in the monster manual, they each got, sort of what was about, a page or a quarter page for some of them, write-up of a basic bit of information. This is enough to get the idea of a campaign started. And so that's what it is. It's inspiration. And I thought it was really cool. It was one of the parts I really thought I was not going to enjoy at all, but they threw in enough things like roll tables and that kind of thing in there, and even some variants and personality traits and things that I can practically use. I can use for a practical purpose, even without being in Forgotten Realms. It was pretty sufficient for that, and I quite enjoyed that. And then we get to Chapter 2. And Chapter 2 is character races. Now, in other books in the future, this clearly wouldn't need to be character races, but the idea, I love that there's some character options in here. And these are not character options that I would think anyone would choose to be in every game. This one is races. You get the Aasimar, Furbolgs, Goliaths, Kenku, Lizardfolk, Tabaxi, Tritons, Bugbears, Goblins, Hobgoblins, Kobolds, Orcs, Yuan-type purebloods. Those are what you get as the different races in here. And none of those are probably going to be in every campaign. Perhaps Aasimar might be in the majority of campaigns. They're one that feels like if you're going to have Tieflings, which were in the core book, then you would likely have that as an option as well. But otherwise, for the most part, these are not things that are in every game. But they're useful as a game master to say, here's some extra options, here's some things you can be, to help make the world feel more unique. And you very well may not use all of them together, of course, either. It would be, if you're doing a goblin-heavy game, maybe you option that they can be bugbears, goblins, or hobgoblins that have betrayed the clan that is the enemy, and now they're on the good side, and they have a different dynamic, a different way to blend in. Interesting things like that. But they're laid out like races, like they would be in the core book. And they have different things. Whatever. Some of them have sub-races. Like we get our different types of Aasimar. Aasimar is very different than Aasimar in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And I like it much better. This is well worth Aasimar. The Dungeon Master's Guide version does not hold a candle to this. I thought they did much better. And especially just giving the few different sub-races of them was quite cool. The Furbolgs, which are these Fey giant people, had some cool things. They have speech of beast and leaf. You have the ability to communicate in a limited manner with beasts and plants. They can understand the meaning of your words, though you have no special ability to understand them in return. You have advantage on all charisma checks you make to influence them. So alright, there are plant monsters in the game, and I know that is what it is referencing. But that's not what it says specifically. As written, you can speak to just a normal tree, and it can understand you. You have no way to understand, it, but it can understand you. You can make sure that tree knows what you're saying. I just like that. Also, some of the ways they're described is pretty cool. They're a kindly folk. Kind giants sort of thing. Goliath is, as far as I could tell, exactly the same as it was in the, that player's companion that we got. But I guess technically that wasn't a print book, even though it was offered print on demand, and I did buy the print copy. Now they have it in an air book. They've slowly been doing that, putting those in other print copies, I guess. Kenku are the raven bird people, flightless, that can only speak through mimicry, which of course could be a trait that would let your players be very obnoxious. Or it could be fun. Either of those are options. Lizard folk, they describe with alien life. They describe as being very different kinds of creatures. The fact that they think of things, they try and describe the mindset that lizard folk have, and how different it is from all the other races, and how it would give them a very for a player that wants to roleplay, it would give them some very unique options. So I thought that was pretty cool. Tabaxi are, of course, cat people, which I love having cat people. But there is a weird thing here as far as how they organize things. Your speed, you have a walking speed of 30 feet. Climbing speed of 20 feet, but they don't put it up in speed like they have on some of the others. They put it down here under your claws, which is also your attack. I just thought that was a weird formatting thing. It's nitpicking, but it was just weird for me to see that. And we have our Tritons, which are our... they're not merfolk, but they're water people. And they also had an interesting sort of society descriptions with how, they've been set off and how they view themselves. They're the champions that have, saved the world from, so many underwater creatures, but the people on land don't necessarily recognize that or aren't necessarily aware of it. But they feel like they should be. We've done so much to save this world. And they have a spell here, Wall of Water, which they get at a certain point. At 5th level. And because this spell is in here, and it's not given to any spell list, this spell can only be gotten if you are this race and at 5th level. It's just sort of interesting to have that spell there and not have it be added to like any of the class lists or anything. By the way, speed here, the swimming speed is actually in the speed column like it would normally be. That's, yeah. And then we have monstrous adventurers, which is where the rest of the races are. And they don't have this full text description, because these are all ones that were described up front in this section. And so you get your bugbears, goblins, hobgoblins, kobolds, orcs, and Unity purebloods. But they do have things like strength score reduced by 2 for kobolds. And actually, they had a warning. Some of these races aren't unusual in that they have a reduction to an ability score. And some are more or less powerful than the typical D&D races. Additional reasons for the monstrous races to be used in a campaign with care. It's sort of these are monsters, and we made them feel like the monsters that they are. That might not be the most balanced. Use at your own risk. It's like these ones here at the back, they're saying, don't necessarily consider these normal. But if you want to just if you're less concerned with balance and more concerned with the roleplay part, it certainly offers some cool options. And of course they add the height and weight little roll table here at the end for the races that are given here, which is very useful to make characters with it. And then we get to Chapter 3, the Bestiary. And this is where we get our new monsters. This is basically the new monster manual part. Which has some weird things that, you never thought you'd need, and some great things that maybe you forgot about. And we're like, oh yes, I remember that. That is so good. I am so glad that is back. Markist. Of course, we do end up with sections for the monsters that were earlier in the book, like Beholders, where we have a few. We have, right here, we have 3 different Beholder variants that were described further up front as far as where they come from, and then they get the amount of description like they would in the Monster Manual back here as well, in addition to that. Boggles. I'm trying to... Oh yeah, this is one. Guys, this is a tiny Beholder variant, and there is a variant, an option for it to be a familiar. If the Game Master so deems fit. So I thought that was cool. Let's see. Cranium Rats and the Swarm thereof. Darkwings, and we do get a few extra demons in here that fit with some things, but not a whole lot here. Nothing described. We get one thing I hate. I wish when we get some more dinosaurs, and I'm really glad to get more dinosaurs. But dinosaurs, they always sort of stuff into a section where here's very, very short descriptions, and there's stat blocks, and the name, and you don't even get art for all of them. I want like a full-on dinosaur monster manual where they redo all of these so we get full descriptions, comparable to this, dedicate pages to each one of the dinosaurs, give them all their art, make it really cool and really fun to run a game with dinosaurs. I want that. Because I don't like having to go to Wikipedia every time. I'm like, which one was this one? It's one of the us's. They all end in us. Yeah, because they're, whatever. They're science names. They're actual names. But, I mean, it's like the kind of thing, if they did it better, that would be a really cool thing to do for a game. Fire newts with their weird giant strider bird thingy. Flail snail. Frakemoth. So, we got some interesting things in here. We get giants, of course, because we had giants in the book. So we have a new, a variant for each type of giant that is interesting. The Dreamwalker, or the Storm Giant Quintessent. But yeah, so we get, new variants of giants with special powers. Gnolls, we get a few different Gnoll variants. This Gnoll Witherwing, basically undead Gnoll. And the description here of it and basically where it comes about, I think it's something, when they get too hungry and they just sort of allow, some of them to eat others and then raise the corpses to be more in the army. It's someone like that. That was interesting. These guys, these grungs, they're just this little section. I don't even think it goes, it doesn't even go on to the next page. And we get variants on the poison they have. They're little, they're small humanoids that are like little frog people that are poisonous. And it just feels like a very fun monster to base in adventure, or at the very least, like an adventure within a campaign around. I think they're like jungle-based creatures, so if you have a campaign in that area, you could have something go on and have grungs be behind it. The one dragon we do have in here is the Guard Drake. And we have variants for different chromatic Guard Drakes and giving them special abilities based on what color they are. But they are, there's challenge rating 2, and they're not babies. So it's a low CR dragon where it doesn't feel like you're slaughtering a baby. Because they're not like the whelps. I like that. I love that option. Just as far as being able to throw some dragons in your Dungeons and Dragons early on and have it feel like, it's a worthwhile challenge. Plus they're like pets. They're guard drakes. They're like guard dogs that are dragons. Very cool. Couple extra hags. We get some hobgoblin options here. Monk or guard. Let's see. Some kobolds. The kobold inventor gets way too much description, but it could be interesting. It feels too complicated to just run as a normal monster, but if you want to have one where it's a memorable encounter, he has all sorts of inventions, which are like trap kind of things. He has like a scorpion on a stick. He has a skunk in a basket. Interesting. And your sorcerer. These guys have hair that turns into whatever cuts it. They're weird, but it was sort of the thing of whatever. There's quite a few Fae in here, actually, like Fae creatures. And so they were just sort of something with interesting information. With our Mind Flayers, we get the Elder Brain and the magic-using Mind Flayer, and we also get this giant block here is how to alter liches in the monster manual to make them Mind Flayer liches, which is interesting, I suppose. And here is a beholder that's been corrupted into a Mind Flayer type creature. So yeah, they have some interesting things there. They have some interesting aberrations and monstrosities in here that I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to use that, but you know what, if I need something interesting, they have nilbogs. And they kind of have it. Reversal of Fortune. In response to another creature dealing damage to the nilbog reduces the damage to 0 and regains 1d6 hit points. And that is a reaction. Which means that they have to use their reaction. So they're not like completely you have to heal them in order to kill them. But it can make them obviously much more challenging to figure out. They're interesting. It's goblin backwards and whatever. It was. I feel like it was at one point a joke monster, and they tried to make it into something of note. And they actually, this nilbogism, they gave it a reason why they're in Goblin Society, what it is. It's like a chaotic spirit. Interesting information, interesting way to use it. But yeah, it's special. Let's see, we have some orcs here. And we end up with orcs, and they're based on the different like deities that they worship. Because I went over that in the orc section. Some of their different like deities of the orcs, and there's ones like with giant nails and disease, and things like that. So orc variants, and of course our fiendish orc. We have quick wings and red caps, which is another fey creature. Sea spawn, which are... Yeah, sea spawn is the idea that they're water creatures, and they can have a few different... Like, they come in different varieties, so they have different anatomy, so they might bite, they might have quills or tentacles. So the different versions of them come different. So that was cool just to make a general, useful... This can be different for different creatures. Shadow Mastiff, another one that I'm quite glad to have in here. Very cool creature. Basic. Something that's simple to use. And that's some of the things I like, is some easy to just throw out their monsters and have it just work. And if you need sort of a dark dog kind of thing, like a minion of a guy, you know, it's a Shadow Mastiff. It could be his dog, so it's kind of like a pet, but it's also a monster that is formidable enough for a low-level party. It's cool. And I think, yeah, it has ethereal sight, so it has some interesting abilities that can make it also work a bit later levels. Let's see. Worm people, ooh, gross. I regret reading this section about the monster that where people's heads tear off and fly off with bat wings. Ew. Veggie pygmies were neat. You get veggie pygmies, and their thorny is their like basically they're fungus that grows from russet mold. That there are people, or if it comes from animals, it becomes a thorny. Very interesting. And they're another one like the little frog guys earlier, where you could have something that's based largely around them. Because there's enough information and they're variable enough that you can have a small adventure based on that. Zvarts. Just that little art. I know it's very different, but it just kind of reminds me of Minions. I haven't seen Despicable Me, but it just... I know enough about it, of course, from pop culture, that it just sort of... Their stance and look, it just sort of makes me think of that. Another dog-like creature. Some Yuan-Tai monsters. More options. There were already several options in the monster manual. Now we get even more. Let's see. And so that's it for the normal monsters. And here, after the last chapter, we have our appendices A and B. A here is a Sordid Beast, which has the Aurochs, whatever, which are like orc bulls. We get cows, or cattle, and that includes 3 different varieties. We have, well, in addition to, obviously, there's cow, and then there's ox, which is, has the Beast of Burden trait. Roth, which is like an Underdark cow. And then stench cows, with a K, which are orange and green, misshapen bison, native to the lower plains. So there's just some weird options for some putting cows in some interesting spots. We get dolphins, which is just, you know, I guess having the Triton, the underwater guy, that's an interesting one to add for that, useful for there. And then we have our swarm of rock grubs, so extra swarm. And then Appendix B is NPCs, which has some really needed things. You kind of see a bit of it starting with the Abjurer. We get a bunch of wizards. This is CR9. I think they're like between like 5 and 9 for each of the wizard types. And they all have an ability, you know, they obviously have their own special spell list that has a lot of spells based on that type of magic, but they also each have an ability that works when they use spells of their type. So essentially it's... And I think there may be abilities from the actual wizard class. But yeah, it's essentially a wonderful thing to have is for some specifics for different types of wizards. So a lot of wizard variations, and we have a few other things as well. We also get this apprentice wizard, this kid here. So that's a nice, whatever, CR 1/4 wizard, which could be useful. Let's see. Archdruid, so we get another sort of CR 12 druid type of NPC that has their change shape ability. An archer, a bard, a blackguard, which is like an evil paladin. Champion, which is just another sort of warrior type person with another variety on that, CR9. Conjurer, diviner, enchanter, so some more of those wizards. And they also have this note here about ability to give them familiars. Evoker and illusionist, more wizards. We get the Kraken Priest, which falls in line with someone that would be worshipping a kraken. And I think one of the monsters earlier on said they sometimes are controlled by Kraken Priests or something, so that's useful for that. We get martial arts adepts and master thief, so monk and rogue. Necromancer, another wizard. Swashbuckler, should be the sort of whatever, corsairs and pirates and that kind of thing. So we have that. Transmuter, so another wizard. The War Priest, which is sort of a cleric, war cleric sort of character. Warlock of the Archfey, the Fiend, and the Great Old One. So we get each of our different warlock variations, and then the Warlord, who is whatever, CR12, sort of battlefield commander sort of person. So that's definitely some needed filling in some holes for NPCs. Useful. Then we get stat blocks by creature type, so you can see things like how few dragons or elementals we have compared to how many Fae or aberrations are in here. Stat blocks by challenge rating. You can see that as well for this book. And then creatures by environment. So basically, so that this book has all the different ways of finding things. And sorting out what creatures to use. They have all that in here. And one final piece of art, which seems to be an Elderbrain and some mind flares with some sort of giant demon looming over it. But that would be Volo's Guide to Monsters. And like I said, I was quite pleased with it. Much more than I thought I would be. I thought sort of almost that idea of how many monsters are you losing out on by having all the fluff in there and non-monster stuff. Yeah, sure, they could put more monsters in the book if they had less other stuff. But they put some good monsters in here, and they give you useful things with that other space, especially, things to make it where they're not just a random monster. It is monsters for a game. It's almost like trying to give those monsters purpose by a lot of them having a lot of, that big chunk at the beginning saying, here's different, information about these monsters so you have a reason to use these variations for the monsters that we're giving variations on. Because some of them are just all new things that are in here, or things that they're just bringing back from older times, and that's great to have. But some of them are just, hey, here's an extra 4 or 5 different gnolls. Well, why do we need those? Well, because we talked about gnolls, and here's some interesting things you could do with them, and these are variations to help you do those things. So I quite enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought, if you've gotten it, if you've gotten use out of it. I'm looking forward, there's certainly a few things in here I can put into the campaign I'm running currently over a bit of time. It's definitely just another tool to use, and I may end up eventually using some of the stuff in the beginning as sort of a starting place for a campaign in general. That was my flip through and review of Volo's Guide to Monsters by Wizards of the Coast for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. I quite enjoyed it. I'll link somewhere down below if you want to pick it up online. Or you could, of course, pick it up at your friendly local gaming store. Almost certainly they are out of the special cover by now, because that was limited edition, and it took me quite a while to read through this. Though, as I said, it doesn't fit the style of the other D&D books, so I wasn't pleased with it. I was pleased with the idea, and I really hope they do it in the future, but they do it where it's just like a different piece of art, but the same style. I really hope they do that. But yeah, so check it out. Thank you for watching. Bye.